As a young girl growing up in the south side of Chicago, I remember my mother asking me to hop a fence and steal a tomato at Miss Littlebit's house. And it wasn't like we didn't know Miss Littlebit. She was my grandmother's best friend. She gave us tomatoes and greens and onions all the time, but I knew the routine. She would ask, I would hop that fence, and I'd pick that tomato with a twist because I couldn't damage the plant. And then I would be the one in the kitchen rinsing it and slicing it thin to get ready to cook for Friday. I knew Friday was coming. Community members would come over because you have fish on Friday with tomatoes. My excitement and my embarrassment was reoccurring every time she did this. But my face kept a quiet tongue because I would never ask the question I was really thinking, which was, why would my mother grow her own food? Then it was time to go and get the fish. This is really the sign of when you have a food desert or a food swamp. So I would have to go into the basement of our building where we stored this shopping cart or this buggy in the community, and I would get this cart and we would walk it to the grocery store. It was there for everybody to use. It wasn't just a mode of transportation, it was a mode of entertainment. Kids would play in it and roll down the hill. Everyone in Chicago has like a dent on their head or under their chin from playing in these shopping carts. And we would get to the store, but what was different is that we wouldn't push this buggy into the store, we would leave it outside of the store. And then we would push the buggy from the store to our homes. My grandmother would use the buggy at 5 in the morning to get our laundry done. Now, this trip to the grocery store to get your things for the week would do everything except make me hungry. It was really not a grocery store, it was like a corner store. Under an L train, near a dimly lit alley, and they were on every cross corner and every main street. These corner stores sold lottery tickets and housed more liquor and junk food than they did real and fresh food. You should have seen the look on my mama's face. She would pass the light-colored guy with the heavy accent at the register, and he would be speaking in his native tongue really fast. I knew he was talking to her, but she would ignore him, and she would nod at the security guard, and we'd go to the back where there was a meat stand, and there was the smell of pine sol and something rotting. And we would take our number, and I would go, "We're happy customers?" We were. If we were not standing in that smelly meat counter line, and if I was not hopping the fence, we were in line for free food at a place called MAC. Stood for Mothers and Children. This is where you could get powdered milk and powdered cheese and cans of fruits and vegetables and juice and pork and boxes of cereal, and they were these white boxes with these black letters like cereal. And you'd be like, yay, this is how we would eat. And we were grateful. I left Chicago because I grew up and I had children, and my goal for my children was to make sure that they were healthy, of course. I wanted their basic needs to be met. I wanted to make sure that they had a calico of culture to experience. And I also wanted to make sure they had access to fresh air, clean water, and good food. So I uprooted my family and I took upon the baton of my ancestors to travel north looking for opportunities. I had to see what in the rest of the world was going on beyond Chicago. Minnesota allowed me to work in the field of early childhood education, HIV prevention, career counseling, reentry, and I lived in North Minneapolis, which turned to look a lot like the city of Chicago. North Minneapolis is 55% white, 55% black, 32% white, 20% Asian, and 50% of people under the age of 18. There's 67,000 people sharing one local grocery store that offers you 28 sugary snacks, more than what they offer in their same store that's in the first-ring suburbs. My first year in Minnesota, I had to deal with the ice storm. I think it was like 96. How many of you remember the ice storm in Minnesota in 96? I also had to deal with the Minnesota nice norm. I didn't have a problem with allowing those two things to shape my soul and prepare me to answer the questions that I really needed to answer. My boys, they were acculturated. They played hockey. They had friends that were Lao and Hmong and Latina and Somali, and I was like, yes, I did it. Them having Hmong friends led me to an opportunity to grow with some Hmong farmers. And I'm like, verbal language is going to be a barrier. But it was irrelevant. Not only did we learn to grow food, but I learned to deter bugs with cayenne pepper and water, and I'm the best weeder in every garden. My tool is a butcher knife. When my daughter was born, I realized that the boys had really embraced their sibling, and the family was growing stronger. Princess Anne took her first steps in a cucumber patch. It was hard to get her legs down back after that, I will say. And we craved dinner time. That fellowship at mealtime was so important, and we also desired a longer growing season in Minnesota so that we could share this reciprocated relationship with the land. That was until the 4th of July. July 4th, 2010 is when trauma hit our family. Right before the fireworks, I had received a phone call, and this call was telling me that my 16-year-old son, Anthony, had been hit by a bullet that wasn't intended for him. Anthony had only been 16 for 2 weeks, and this was my first time really letting him travel the neighborhood on his own, and he didn't survive. Now, trauma will do a couple of things to you, but at this time, I realized it was causing me to reevaluate how I spend my time. So as my son had transitioned from this earth, I also watched my garden in my backyard die, and I did not want to go back to growing food. I wanted to gamble. I wanted to shop. I wanted to drink, because that's what you do, right? That's what I saw on TV. So I was like, that's what I'm going to do. One day I was at a stoplight and I gazed into the sun. And as I gazed into the sun, I remembered that for 30-something years of my life, I had always been told that if you look into the sun, you go blind. And I could remember connecting with the sun. And when the sun and I connected, I wasn't thinking about just my children. I was thinking about all children. I wasn't thinking about going blind. And then I got this second call, and it wasn't a phone call. It was a call from the universe. It was an invitation. Go back to the land. Grow food. What's wrong with your garden? And I didn't want to believe that because I had never heard of that before. Then I was invited to a meeting where I would sit with two phenomenal women. One was a sister. She has a really big family, the big family I always wanted, and she was also vegetarian, and I had never met a sister that was vegetarian. And the other lady said she was a Jewish recovering lawyer, and I had never met a recovering lawyer. So it was inevitable for me to be reunited to the land because these women had the courage to call out those issues that I had thought about in my mind for 30 years, and they wanted to have some action behind it. Being that we all operated from different worldviews, we thought that we should ask the community about issues related to food that was important to them. We knew that food security was tied to education, we knew it was tied to employment, and we knew it was tied to safety. We considered that it may be disrespectful to challenge one's culture and ask someone to change the way that they eat, even if it's about their health. So we went into the community with questions. We invited the elders, we invited the youth, we invited everyone in between, and we asked the community, what do you think about your community and the food issues? Where do you go to the grocery store? How do you get back and forth from the grocery store? Because now they have painted lines around the parking lot and you can't take the buggy to your house anymore. These conversations happened at cutting boards with hairnets and strangers, and this experience birthed appetite for change. We cooked and ate and talked with 400 people from different cultures, and they said they liked cooking and eating and talking with each other. The voices that we heard shaped the services that we offer. The people who were passionate were volunteers. Once we got funding, they became employees. We found that people value that connection, and now we use community cooking as an organizing tool, and we call it Community Cooks. It's not a cooking class. It's a simple sentence with power in the end. We don't claim to give people power. They're born with that. They come with that. We just offer a platform in which you can operate within your power. Within the last 5 years in North Minneapolis, we've embarked on changing the local food system, where there's 38 fast food restaurants in a 2-mile radius, and families who go to corner stores with their SNAP benefits, and the corner stores don't have to sell real food. And they all have the question in their mind, is this food here because I eat it, or do I eat it because it's here? Now we operate an organization that has culinary training for 12 adults, 11 youth educators with a viral video, 10 urban farms, 9 businesses incubated, 8 food trucks who use our shared kitchen, 7 days a week, 6 movements moving, 5 famous recipes for your food needs, 3 women founders, too much going on, and a kitchen where we love to cook and eat. So now it's been 5,000 meals and 2,000 pounds of produce later, we noticed that the foodscape started to change the food. In the kitchen and in the garden is where these issues are discussed. Those are the fair playing fields. This is where we blur the lines. I believe that whatever movement you're in or whatever goal you have for your life, that food cannot be the element you neglect. Remember breakfast? The most important meal of the day, right? But so often I'll see a person with a portable battery charger and trying to get juice for their cell phone, and they haven't eaten breakfast, and they'll allow a fictional character to serve them lunch, and they have no clue what their family's having for dinner. This is our world, a world filled with people who are poorly eating and expected to perform well and smile while they're doing it. Food, we all need it. Regardless of how much money you make and the hue of your skin and where you live, we all need to eat it. Real food. And it all goes in, and it all digests the same, and it all comes out looking the same. I share this story with people so that they can seek to see that the small things in life are the critical ones. I challenge the idea of the basic need and us valuing our elements, fresh water, clean air, local food. Can we enjoy life without the bells, the whistles, and the fireworks? Some of those considered conveniences aren't really good for our environment. Let us find some time to stand in the sun and seek answers. Let us find some time to stand in the soil to heal. Let us make sure we're responsible for feeding our loved ones, and we'll let them do the dishes because they love us back, right? It is at the cutting boards, and it's during seed sorting, and it's in the garden where people see that they're more similar than different. It's time to start breaking bread and getting back to the basics. It's time for people to cook and eat and talk about the change they want to see. It's in families, we in dire need to get back to having dinner, to recapture that human connection and not always being involved with technology. In urban areas, we must define our issues and discuss and seek our own solutions as we heal and defend ourselves against gentrification under the embellishment title of Promise Zone. As humans, we must admit that it's social sustenance that's at the seed of our humility. We must preserve it and project it out into the future for the sake of our existence. Remember Miss Little Bit? She invested her time into her soil. It was the foundation for her relationship in the community. She didn't have children. We were her family. She planted a good seed. She removed the weeds and she watered and harvested, and the energy she put into it gave her what she earned. And her crop was good, and her plants were fruitful. And this energy she kept and she shared with our family. Now, if her soil was toxic and her seeds did not germinate and her plants were barren, then she would reconsider that process. She would scrape up those little plants and she would toss it away, and she would not share. So I ask, what should we preserve? What should we dispose of? What is necessary to our existence, and what is nuisance? It's time to start breaking bread back to the basics, using food as a tool to create health, wealth, and social change. What change are you hungry for?